All right, everyone. Welcome back to a Cloudless Mind podcast. And Paul and I are here today to really explore an interesting topic that isn't typically addressed in the business world.
No.
It's quite strange, and it's two different approaches to really working and dealing with the mind and the brain. So they're called the direct approach and the gradual approach. So Paul, why don't you lead us into this distinction right now?
Yeah, let's take the red pill from the matrix, go pretty deep, and talk about non-duality or monism from Spinoza and Albert Einstein. Normally we are used to the gradual approach or the indirect approach, which means we think we are a separate human being with free will, and in order for us to make life a little bit more easy and liberating, you can use self-development. So trainings, mindfulness, or meditate, or you can do a million things in order to improve yourself. This is I think the indirect path is what everyone's familiar with. You can go to Tony Robbins or a meditation course, it doesn't matter. It's all about the I and how to improve the I. But it's also our books got like the Cloudless Mind. This is the approach, the direct approach, so the non-dual approach. And that's pretty radical because it says that this I that you want to improve does not exist because you as a separate being are an illusion. Now, if you hear this for the first time, you will now go for a beer or be confused. But the direct path is way more radical, but way more liberating. So how did you come across non-duality and how did it change your life and your approach?
Well, honestly, I learned about it through YouTube and through you. Now, originally, I did have some exposure to this work when I was about 30 years old through Eckhart Tolle in a book called A Power of Now, which a lot of people have heard of.
Yeah.
But it really didn't sink in. I mean, it was there, and there was obviously interest that was happening in this action figure here. The curiosity sort of kept me in that tractor beam for a while, but I can't say that I really understood it or grokked it until I really came across you and some work that you did when you were sitting in your white flowing outfit and in India back when you were much younger.
Yeah.
Anybody who's watching this, they can go on YouTube and find him. But then we connected, and really, it's just become part of the fabric of my life. And what I would say is through this discovery, it's just changed everything. But yeah, how about yourself? I mean, what was the origin story for you in here to where you became aligned with the direct path?
I was even in my studies, I was searching for answers, and I graduated with an essay on the evolution of the human consciousness, and at that time I did understand enough from neuroscience to understand there's actually no free will. There is the experience of free will, definitely, but if we look deeper, it's simply not there. And then when I was 29, I found a book from Ram Tzu, and it was so radical, and that said, but even the I that you think you are is an illusion as well. And to me it was like mind-blowing. I bought a book from the Indian guru Ramesh Balsekar and I couldn't stop reading. I was like, this is the most fascinating thing I've ever seen. And let me explain why it is so liberating. Because we're all in the beginning identified, like you think this is me. And then two main fears pop up, like, am I good enough? So I think the majority of people are still constantly proving like, am I good enough, and getting validation from the people around them. And the second fear is I need to control life. Of course, we do not even know what the first thought will be that pops up, but the brain creates the illusion that you are in full control of your life. So these two fears create a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm, and therefore a lot of people suffer emotionally and mentally. But if you understand that you are simply energy at play, as Einstein said, and that everything simply goes as it goes, well, this insight to me was so fascinating and so liberating. I was like, oh my God, it's such a relief to see through the illusion.
And once you discover this, then there's just, you just drop your shoulders. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else to do. I mean, we've done this, we've done a great video called The Doing Nothing Business Plan. In actuality, it's very accurate. And then what you'll find is from this place, so much gets done. It's not like you're not doing anything.
No, true, because you will automatically simply act according to your nature, like the water flows because it's its nature, the tree grows, it's its nature. And we are talking, this is our nature. The only thing is that we as human beings have got this self-awareness, like this little trick from the brain that constantly creates the idea that this is me talking. But because people can really experience it when you are in flow, like making love, reading a book, going to the theater, watching movies. When you're in flow, the self-awareness is being switched off. So there's only awareness, and watching movies makes you totally relaxed and you simply enjoy looking at the movie. And in the same way, you can experience life by simply looking at life without constantly struggling with, yes, but this is me. And so many times of the day when we are in flow, we don't experience ourselves as an I. It only pops up when the mind starts rolling again.
And what you find is let's say the indirect approach, or sort of the gradual approach, where you're constantly, working to improve the self or whatever, and improve the I, that starts to give away when this other understanding comes in, because you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
In one way, I'm actually making this suffering bigger. I'm validating that there is an I that could actually suffer, right?
Yeah.
And then when that energy starts to move, where you might get sick enough. Like I just got sick enough of myself. Sometimes I remember that very briefly. Very clearly back, a decade or so ago. I just was sick of myself.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait, who is this?
Yeah.
So what we're talking about, what we started talking about before, is this gradual approach eventually, I believe, leads so beautifully into this different understanding, just like you just described it.
So oftentimes people start with the gradual indirect approach by first improving this illusionary I. And within the dream we live in, this can definitely liberate you, like going to a coach or in therapy or whatever. But oftentimes when people are totally done seeking, this is when there becomes some space for this new non-dual insight. Still 99% of people don't want to hear they do not exist, because for the ego this is the worst possible message you could possibly hear. It's like
It is.
Like I had this guy in a talk, and he was like, he was like 50 years old. He's like, for 50 years I tried to be good enough, and now you are telling me that now that I reached the level that I'm finally confident and good enough, that I do not exist. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, sir. So sorry.
Well, if you wanna, and part of this thing is, once you kind of get where we're going, yeah, you might want to direct your awareness through no free will that you have, but the apparent free will. You might want to direct it in improving the I, but you can actually start to laugh at that if you're open to what we're talking about here. It all becomes quite funny.
Yeah, it becomes more light, and it's just a play. So it's just like Bill Hicks used to say, enjoy the ride, but do not take it too seriously.
Well, and that's probably a good place for us to close here, because that is really a good description. It's very, very serious and everything, and all the shaping in the sort of the indirect approach. And then when you move to the direct, it might sound more hardcore, but it actually isn't. It actually becomes quite light.
To me, this is still the most fascinating thing, to figure out that this is all an illusion and it simply goes as it goes.
And the thing too is, the wonder kind of never stops, because we're always surrounded with all of this material to practice this all the time, and to be able to, to sort of continually embed that, because, we're both human beings. We both can get distracted. We can have fear. We can have, I'm not trying to portray for either one of us like anything's like there's a super enlightenment, although you're very
Oh,
enlightened.
I'm extremely,
right?
yeah. I think I'm far beyond every guru you know. Now, the funny
Yeah,
thing is,
well, that's
life
good.
will still mess with you. You will be moving from the left to the right. So life always gets you.
Well, and this is a topic we're going to cover in much greater detail in the future, and how if companies and organizations started to gain awareness about what we're speaking of, cultures become completely different, systems, right? You have a way of dealing with the world that doesn't have so much of this. Like, I just got off the phone with a leader yesterday, and they had this great big training on how to have hard conversations.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, Now, I get that from the direct approach, the self-having, but when you start to see through the illusion that there are no hard conversations.
No, because if you can just laugh at yourself, I mean, like we can say anything to each other. I can never offend you. You can never
That's right.
offend me, because we just laugh at or when you criticize me, I might be, yeah, you're right. This is the apparatus not functioning properly or whatever. But hard conversations are only necessary when egos are in the way, because there is one strong ego there, one strong ego there, and then they use all kinds of methods to battle each other. But once you see through that illusion, it's not necessary anymore. You can skip that training.
Yeah, well, and those trainings actually embed and make it more real that there are these, first of all, there's a hard conversation, but there's two selves that need to work thing out. In actuality, it's just energy at play. It's awareness that got redirected into areas that we could probably redirect.
Yes.
And just stop all the drama.
Yeah.
Last night I was involved in a big dramatic situation with some friends, and I think I frustrated them because I just wouldn't buy into the comedy the drama at all. It just felt like comedy. But anyway, well, I think this is a really great great place for us to sort of wind down today. But what a topic, and what an opportunity for a lot of different organizations to relook at the way that they, see their culture and what they're teaching them. So we'll talk a lot about that more in the future.